I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May I have a motion or a review of approval of the agenda? I know that we have potentially, no, we don't have do we have public for item number 8?
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, let's try to leave it in place and get through the consent calendar quickly and hope that we can have that. I understand that that person needs to leave by 6 p.m. But since we didn't have closed session, let's be optimistic and think we can do that.
Can you explain that again, Mary? I can't catch it all. You're talking.
Sorry, it was in part due to conversation in another meeting. There is someone here on agenda item number 8, but we know that that person needs to leave by 6 p.m. So it is simply to be sure we get that person involved in the conversation that I considered moving that agenda item. But since we didn't have a closed session, we are starting precisely at 5. I don't think that'll be a scheduling problem. So, sorry.
I'd like to move with the agenda, please.
Do I have a second?
Well, I'd second it. All right.
Okay, Michael and Tom.
Doug.
Great. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Tom, yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Scylla,
Yes,
unanimous vote. Thank you.
thank you. Item number 3, open time for public to raise items not on the agenda or for future agendas. Do we have any public who wish to raise any items at this time? Hearing or seeing none. Agenda item number 4, committees report out. Tom, would you like to give us a report from the Finance Committee?
Sure, I'll start. Mary and I met yesterday. We reviewed most of the consent calendar items, including the financial statements. And Mary pointed out that we got the full payment from Marin General Hospital for their connection fee. We thought it was going to be phased over 10 years, but they paid us in cash, and then we, I think, forwarded already Central Marin's share on. We also accepted 2 sewer extensions, one the Victory Village and the other the Larkspur Creekside Homeowners Association. We might want to pull that out if anybody is from the Homeowners Association. I don't think so. We did have we reviewed a couple of change orders and terminated our emergency action project. Then we also reviewed the we looked at item 9 to approve a change order or a task order with Newt for the which we'll talk about, but that's going to save us more money than HDR is going to charge us. So I think those are the things that we were talking about. Mary, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, and just to be clear, we were reviewing everything. We didn't obviously make any decisions on any of these items.
Yeah, correct.
Mary, how much was the payment by Marin General?
It was about $600,000. It's no.
Mary, you're on mute.
Thank you for letting me know. I was having a whole conversation. It's almost $600,000, page 2 of 5 in item 7C. It jumped out at me because the capacity charges, we were 1,692% of expected. So it's a big chunk of change. And yeah, we're looking to get it. I'm happy
We
to get it.
received a check. Melvin Garcia is is here to answer questions, but I believe the check was over $1.2 million. And then we forward approximately 60% of that capacity charge to CMSA for the treatment portion.
Right.
And we retain the remainder for the collection capacity portion. It was about 1.2. Do you remember the check that we cashed, Melvin?
I'm looking at it. It's 1.4 million. 800,000 goes to CMSA, and about 600,000 goes to Rose Valley Sanitary.
At 1.4 million.
1.4.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Steve,
Thank you.
if I remember correctly, I heard yesterday, we had originally agreed to give them terms on that amount, and they have now opted just to pay everything, the full bill up front.
That's correct. We gave them an opportunity to finance it, and they made a decision to pay one lump sum.
All right. Thank you, Tom, for that report on the Finance Committee. There wasn't any meeting of the Ad Hoc Facilities Committee, was there?
No,
And was there a meeting of the CMSA? Yes, there was.
Yeah, Doug, I'll just start if that's
Okay.
okay.
It's fine.
We're gonna do a bond sale, and we're actually gonna do it this morning, but because ours was about $9 million, and the state of California decided to do about a $1 billion bond sale, the people felt like, yeah, they weren't gonna pay much attention to us. So it's been postponed until tomorrow morning, when it looks like the docket is a little bit less crowded and people will pay attention to what we're doing. We went over the district financial policies, and we approved it. The PG&E interconnection agreement, we have to change it because we're putting in that new Jenbacher engine, which is a 1.3 megawatt engine, and the old I want to say Rottweiler, but it was slipping away my mind right now. But the old engine is like 30 years, well, it's rebuilt, but it's 750 kilowatts. So this is a major increase, and it's 40% more efficient, which is really cool. And we've got a 10-year agreement, and anyway, that's all very good and lovely and all set up. So when the Jenbacher engine kicks in, we're going to be selling a lot of energy, all green, back to the Marin Clean Energy. And just as a point of note, in September, using our current old cogen engine, we were able to produce 98% of all of the energy used by CMSA. And there was one day when the generator had to go down because there was an unexpected power outage, and we had to kick in the diesel for a little bit. And right now, that's a big deal to go between diesel, cogen, and Marin Clean Energy. When we get the new system in, it's actually very cool. We'll be able to do what's called islanding, which is when basically PG&E does go down and we don't get energy from the outside, rather than have to run strictly on diesel and have to be flaring the biogas. We're going to actually be able to run the diesel as a just in case while the cogeneration engine continues. And that'll be really, really cool, and very excited about that. And then there's the board policies, which they do once every 2 years. And we went through that without any significant changes and approved them.
We specifically did not change these stipends.
No. Which had not been changed before recently for about 15 years, I think, or since.
It was from 86. We did it 2 years ago, but before that, it had been 86 in a long time.
Yeah.
By the way,
Okay.
reminding the board once again, on the front page of the CMSA website, which is cmsa.us, You can see on the bottom of this page the CMSA energy production, consumption, and export. And we've been exporting power since last November.
That's great. And that was your first meeting as president, Michael?
It was uneventful.
Congratulations.
I didn't screw up.
All right, is there a North Bay watershed report this month, Pam?
Yes. So basically, it was a healthy discussion around Petaluma Valley and the Sonoma Valley groundwater for drinking and other basic needs. It's pretty interesting. So they say that 6,000 people in Petaluma Valley and 5,000 in the Sonoma Valley rely solely on groundwater for drinking, which I was pretty surprised to hear. And they talked about the crops in the vineyards and how that water is also helpful for that irrigation purposes. And it also supports, obviously, fish, wildlife, and plants, etc. I guess the California 2015 Sustainable Groundwater Management Act came into play and is really reviewing and trying to figure out also, I'm assuming, wells and private wells, and how are they going to figure out who's taking whose water, etc. It was a really very interesting discussion. That was pretty much the most of it that I can recall. And they had some great maps, really great maps, which at some point would be nice to have maybe more of a robust discussion. And maybe I could do like a 5 or 10 minute presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. All right, agenda item number 5, verbal report by general manager, please.
Thank you, President Silla. I've got 4 items I'd like to report on, and I'll try to be brief as possible. The first item, we met with LAFCO, Local Agency Formation Commission, along with the county San Quentin Village Sewer Maintenance District representatives. And CMSA, Jason Dow, joined us for this meeting to discuss annexing the San Quentin Village sewer system. So this is an ongoing issue. We've identified the business plan and have a target date of annexation, July 1st. So we reviewed the status of some agreements with Department of Corrections and Caltrans that the county had, and lo and behold, what we learned at this meeting, there are none. There are no active agreements with Caltrans or the Department of Corrections. So it's a matter of getting some contacts, figuring out to what degree these state agencies would prefer to have agreements. So it's fairly open-ended because there are no agreements in force, and yet the sewage keeps flowing, as we say, in our business. Keeps going through the prison over to the treatment plant. So CMSA is in the loop. They currently operate a pump station over there, and they would prefer we would take it over. So our pump station crews would start working on that station, and we give it a name. And Steve Mixus and I decided Pump Station 40 has a nice ring to it. It fits in our system. And currently they maintain their system by contracting out with the local businesses, local plumbers, and so we could take that over as well. It's about 35 services, so it's not a huge impact on us, and it appears we're the best fit. And the county doesn't want to be in the sewer maintenance district business anymore. Julia, if you could let me share something. I want to show a map.
Hey, Steve, why do they have a supposedly supposed to have a contract with Caltrans? Is Caltrans a customer?
Yeah, there's a lateral connection.
Oh, okay.
So can you see this map?
Yes.
And I guess it's showing on my desktop. Okay, I see what's going on here. Okay, yeah, now what you're seeing here is the bay is on the south end, or on the lower end, and main street through the village goes, and there's a couple of blue lines that are gravity sewers. And the dotted black line and yellow line is the outline of the sewer maintenance district that the county wants to let us annex. And what this illustrates is you have gravity systems that go to a pump station that's near the bay shoreline. And then the red line is a force main that goes up to a gravity line here, still within the district, that gravity flows into the prison. And there's actually a couple of services in the prison property, the state property, that discharge to this system as well. So as we get through the details about sewer rates and who pays and you know, assessing different properties, we'll work through those details, but we don't see that as insurmountable. So I just wanted to share with you what, you know, what are we talking about taking on? You know, it's about, there's a handful of services here in this neighborhood and a few gravity lines and a pump station and a force main, very short force main that would be added to our maintenance and responsibilities. And then we would set rates when we do the next 5-year rate plan. And we also learned at this meeting that they like Murray Park also have reserve funds that would offset the fact that they pay lower sewer rates until the 5-year sewer rate study. So it's a very parallel situation, which is fortunate because that makes the numbers fit well here. So I just wanted to brief the board about that. And that's moving forward. Okay, we can stop sharing. I think that's all I have to say about that for now. And then moving on, I wanted to just acknowledge that we awarded 3 $1,000 scholarships for students of the class of 2020 for essays that we received and reviewed. And those lucky recipients are Joshua Condry, who was went to Drake and now goes to USF. We have Karina Roseklein, who went to Temescal High and now goes to Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. And then finally, Virginia Schneider, who also went to Drake and now goes to UC Santa Cruz. So congratulations to these 3 college students from our district.
Yay.
Okay, the third thing I wanted to mention was, you know, our competency-based training initiative is going strong these days. We started a third-party assessment system at the end of September, and it's continuing every Monday and Tuesday of this month, and it will go into November. It's going very well. There's a lot of activity, and our staff's competencies are being affirmed, as we knew, on many pieces of equipment, including the ramjets, which are the hydrojetters, the Harbins, which are the high-pressure hydrojetters. We have 2 of those vehicles each, and then we're replacing the ramjets as you know later this year. We also did competency on the rodders, on bypass pumping, very important thing to know, gas detection, and then also the VAC-CON, so it's the vacuum and jetter functions. And so our staff are doing flying colors in these areas, and this is important for passing on competencies and knowledge and standard procedures and for future hires as people retire. It's a very important way for us to do sustainability, succession planning. And finally, we did add SOPs for inspections, and we're excited about that development, and it's worked out real well. And then finally, sanitary sewer overflow response. That one we're not as competent in generally. Why would that be? Well, because we don't have that many of them, right? And you got to practice these things. So we're gonna another purpose of this whole exercise is to identify. We say to identify the delta, the change needed, the training needed for specific individuals based on the specific assessments. And so we're getting that information, and we'll probably have these refreshers every year on how to document SSOs and for proper reporting to the authorities. And then I wanted to hand it over to Steve Mixis if he wanted to add anything, or did I cover that enough about where we're at and what to expect?
Absolutely well said. And, at the start of this, a lot of the staff members were a little worried, and then they realized that they were the ones that actually developed the program. And that's where the stress was alleviated. Dante and Annie Morrison, they're amazing to work with. And
Yeah, they're the third-party assessors.
oh, sorry, yes. So we got a couple more things to go through, and I'm hearing a lot of positives. There's going to be some feedback. We're all going to meet together, see what went right, what went wrong, and then course correct. But I see this as an amazing opportunity to understand and develop an individualized training program for each staff member. So we're very happy how it's going.
Thank you. That's our operation maintenance manager, Steve Mixes, for those who don't know. All right. Finally, the fourth thing I wanted to cover, thanks for your patience in this. I know you want to keep going through this meeting. I wanted to let you know that the CSDA let its members know about a Cal OES $20 million grant program for special districts specifically. And Julia, if you could let me share screen again, I just wanted to show you this document that we're responding to. So it looks good. I've worked on this a little bit. It's the Community Power Resiliency Allocation Special Districts Program. But it's a fast due date. We need to get applications in at the end of the month. And we can apply for up to $300,000, as you can see here. And, for critical infrastructure. And so we're going to apply for the full 300 based on the costs we anticipate for pump station 14, 24, and 25. That was a project on the list for this year to do generator replacements along with fuel tanks. So we're planning on this anyway. Something like $550,000 is a rough estimate of what that's going to cost us. And so we'll be able to provide matching funds because we have this budgeted. And then we also are talking about a transfer switch here at Kerner for about 10 grand. And then here's another thing that's on today's agenda is the Nude Engineering Lift Station assessment. That actually we can also include on this because we can do planning for critical infrastructure. And so this money, this budget that we have in our budget, we can apply as well. So I've got a tally for about $700,000 of expenses we're going to have anyway, and we're going to apply for this $300,000 to see if we can offset those costs. So we'll keep you posted on how that goes.
That's great.
For my report.
As a former grant writer, that still sends off the endorphins like, oh my gosh. A grant for money we were already going to spend. Great. All right, verbal report by board members and requests for future items. Item number 6. Yes, Michael, I saw your hand first. And then Pam.
Let Pam go first.
Oh, okay. Pam, go ahead then.
Thank you, Michael. This Saturday, it's a Take Back Pharmacy Drug Day at 10 o'clock in Fairfax, down near the police station. I think if you just drive there, you'll see people out there. You just drive by. It's awesome. There's also going to be, if you're going to drop off stuff, there's electronic drop off too, and you can get papers shredded. So for the pharmacy drop off, things have to be like, you can do bubble packs of pills, but no syringes or anything weird. But they will take ointments and like a big bag, and Renee Goddard is always down there. So if you could put it on the website, I would love it. And it has been on the website in the past. If you can just do a little thing on the front page, it would be awesome.
Do you have to be a Fairfax resident?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. It's amazing how much stuff you get, and it's really not good to leave it out there for especially kids and it's all, it's probably expired, so that could even make you sick using expired drugs.
All right, thank you, Pam. Michael, here you are.
Well, for some future meeting, and there's no rush for our overworked staff out there, I was out riding around, as I sometimes am known to do, and I came across one of our people working at the end of Stadium Way with a device that I hadn't seen before, which I just thought was extraordinary. And I would love for our operations people, Stephen Mixus, and to maybe give us a little talk about it, because we have manholes that need to be assessed all the time, and some of them are well over 100 years old, made out of brick. And in order to assess them, we have to send somebody down into a methane environment, which is not the most safe, and do a visual inspection of the manholes. And we have a device which hooks up to the back of our fancy truck, and you lower it down into the manhole, and it does like a 3D scan onto a computer of the manhole, and it can see in high definition things that the human eye can't possibly see, and do a condition assessment that then the people back at the district can look at it in detail and figure out how we're going to fix these things, whether we're going to replace the manhole or whether we're going to epoxy it using that device that we've got. Well, you know, but anyway, it's extraordinary, and the latest iteration of that gadget that we're not the first ones to use it, but this latest iteration of it that we have, we're one of not very many people in the country that are using the latest one. And that was extremely cool. And then the other cool thing that he had in the truck right there was this thing called a crawler, which it doesn't just CCTV the thing, it 3D CCTVs the thing in the same kind of way. And we can look at an HD inspection of the pipe as this thing that you can change the wheels for different size pipes goes down the pipe. But as I understood it, was extraordinary about this is not only does it send us a rendering of the pipe, but it tells us in 3D space exactly where the pipe is, because as I think we'll all know, that sometimes when you dig a hole to find a pipe where you think it is, it ain't there. And so not only are we going to be looking at these pipes in detail, this thing sends back to our graphic system exactly the depth of the pipe and where exactly it is and where we think it is. And my understanding is we're beginning to use it, and would love, doesn't have to be November or December, but at some time in the future, just have a look at it, and maybe we can look at what one of those videos might look like where we found something interesting.
All right, thank you, Director Borstein.
Mary, I just have one correction on what I said. It's actually October 26th from 10 to about 1 p.m. in the Fairfax Police Station.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other board member reports or requests? Tom, Doug? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar. We had talked about pulling item G. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to pull from the consent calendar today?
I'd like to pull item D.
D as in dog?
Yes.
Okay. And do we have public here about item G? Is anybody aware of no, we do not, Julia? Okay. Oh, well, why don't we talk about D, and then why don't we just make reference to G as the Finance Committee reviewed it? So Tom, yes, what would you like to note about item D?
We should recognize good work by our staff when it occurs, and we got the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And so this is, it shows that our financial report is up to their standards, and in fact, rates an excellence in achievement. And I believe that Melvin probably did almost all the work, I'm not sure, but Melvin and Felicia, and I just wanted the board to recognize a good job.
Thank you, Melvin and Felicia, yes, great work.
You're welcome.
Pam, did I see you raising your hand otherwise?
I was wondering, are we going to have somebody, the number 8, come on early? Was that the plan?
After the consent calendar.
Does he have enough time? Doesn't he have to leave at 6?
Yeah, but we're endeavoring just to get through this very quickly, so I think we'll make it. Thank you. So 7G, we just wanted to call out that this was a successful completion of work with the Creekside Homeowners Association that was begun quite a while ago. It was sort of a spec development that they built their own sewers and everything else, and it was kind of a mess. And in order to take over maintaining it, correct me if I'm saying this wrong at all, we required that they bring their system up to our standards, and they did so. And so now we are finally annexing them, or rather they're in our district already. We're completing the public sewer extension. Steve, did you want to show that nasty picture of what it looked like underground?
Yeah, if Julia let me share my screen again.
I think she'll let you.
I get the one with the, yeah, this was my favorite. Oh, is it up there yet?
This is what it looked like underground before they upgraded their sewer system. Julia, can you let Steve share screen? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so there's an example where the green is actually the lateral. And so we have to deal with this local drain, gas lines, electric lines, different utility boxes, and so there were just an incredible amount of things in the way, including workers. Yeah. And let's see. One more, yeah, just this, and the roots that were there, all these trees were right next to the utilities, which is a no-no. So it was really a rat's nest of utilities to get through. And so, but now being up to speed or being up to standard means a lot in this setting. This is the flat area of our system that's waterlogged. It's under sea level. So all these pipes are submerged in groundwater. And so having them up to district standard really makes a difference. And as I mentioned in the staff report, there were 70 lower laterals that we replaced with cleanouts. And out of those 70 properties, 20 did the upper laterals as well. And we provided grants out of the grant program to facilitate that. So it's hard to quantify it, but I think, with this neighborhood, with the map that you see in the staff report, it covers a lot of ground, and it probably does a lot of I&I reduction in saltwater intrusion. So I'm done sharing. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a long project that I don't think the board heard that much about as it went along, and it's successfully completed. So great. All right, those were the items to be pulled from the consent calendar. Do we have any public comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none.
I'd like to note one thing, Tom, you mentioned at Finance Committee, there was the wrong number was put in an amount due contractor on item 7E. It's a minor thing, but it should have just reflected the retention amount. So that was a typo. It doesn't really affect the item, but it was a typo in the staff report. So we'll make sure that's corrected.
Okay.
Thank you. So may I have a motion?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, Michael and Tom and Doug. Roll call, Julia?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Beggs,
Yes.
Scylla,
Yes,
unanimous vote. Thank you.
thank you. Item number 8, consideration of authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of council to execute an agreement for land use related legal services with Ragianti and Freitas.
Well, great. I'll briefly introduce this item. I wanted to let you know that as an outgrowth of our workshop or our public meeting on September 30th, it was evident that we would benefit from expert advice on legal advice on land use with respect to the future of this property behind me, the Larkspur Landing Circle property. which has been cleaned up to EPA standards, and we're awaiting final approval from them, which is going well. And so I wanted to bring staff's recommendation to retain Ragianti Friedas. And under this proposed agreement, they would provide legal counsel to the district in the specialty area of land use matters related to this property, such as advising on land use entitlements. Lead attorney for Ragianti Friedas is partner in the firm, Riley Hurd, who is joining us tonight. And he was born and raised here in Marin County, specializing in land uses here and within the county, and previously served as deputy city attorney for the city of Belvedere and the town of San Anselmo. Significant experience in the application of land use and zoning laws, Subdivision Map Act and Brown Act, and CEQA. So I wanted to now introduce Riley Hurd, who's joining us this evening. He has to take off. I think you're attending the Sausalito Planning Commission here in about 20 minutes. So thank you for making time available to introduce yourself and so to meet you and to answer any questions of the board. Riley?
Yes, thank you, Steve, and good evening, members of the board. My name is Riley Hurd. Like Steve said, born and raised here in Marin, and I'm a land use specialist focusing nearly exclusively on Marin County and the entitlement process here in Marin. I've operated in every jurisdiction here in Marin, appeared in front of every single planning commission, city council, board of soups. I also previously had a couple city attorney roles and still represent a few special districts. So I've been on both sides of the dais, but Marin County is seeing really a seismic shift in housing projects right now, specifically. And, you know, things that would have been just laughed out of the room as short as 2.5 years ago are now getting a lot of groundwork. So we usually say that the last to develop get punished, but I think the district may be in a unique scenario for this one, given the shift in policy that we're seeing. But I can get into some of the specifics and thoughts around the site when that's on the agenda. But for this evening, you know, just here to answer questions, let you know I've been involved in multiple multi-hundred unit and 1,000-unit housing projects, as well as other mixed-use developments, and then everything down to, you know, single-family residences, because it's Marin. But if people have questions or have any, you know, specific data that you're looking for, I wanted to be here this evening and answer that for you.
Thank you. I mean, as a first question on behalf of the board, maybe this is more to staff than to Riley. How do we decide we needed this? How does this work with our Century Urban consultants? And yes, let's start there. Yeah,
and I'll offer a quick response. I also invited Bryant Sparkman to be here to answer some questions too with Century Urban. And, you know, when Century Urban pulled together a lot of folks with different expertise, but not a lawyer, you know, not a legal component, you know, and so there's a lot going on with that team, but we spoke to them after the workshop that we had and thought it would be advantageous to have that additional legal representation that's very Marin County specific. And so we looked at different options, and Felicia had worked with Riley before at the city of Belvedere, and he was one of the options that we considered. Bryant, do you have any comments on that?
We can't hear you, Bryant. I'm not sure why.
Brian, we can't hear you.
It looks green.
Yeah, you know, it's the go-to meeting, you know, sometimes it freezes up. But at any rate,
I have a question. Oh, there we
yeah, go ahead, Doug. Well, while Bryant gets it, he can call and answer the question. But
he was in, then he was gone. I'm just curious, Riley, and I know you work from San Anselmo. Do you have a clue as to what kind of hours we're looking at?
Yeah, you know, it's a question I get asked a lot, and to be honest, I've stop trying to guess. You know, what I usually do is try and break it up into tranches, usually starting with what would be considered a due diligence memo, even though you already own the property. But the scope of this memo looks at general plan, community plan, zoning designation, and looks at the range of potential uses and the path to entitlement for any potential project that you're thinking. And I did review the package that was presented to your board by Bryant and the Century Urban team. And what I saw in there, I was happy to see, because it was what I don't do. And that is the kind of deal structure, transactional, which one's gonna, you know, make the most sense financially. That's the part that they handle. The part that I handle is the entitlements analysis, moving it through the process with the city of Larkspur, which I've appeared in front of a number of times, representing malls and homeowners and multifamily development projects. And then another thing that popped out at me was, you know, this is publicly owned land, and there are very specific provisions in the government code and other places for the disposition of public property. And so you got to keep a close eye on that as well. But in getting back to your question, what I like to do is kind of put a box around an initial review, present that, and then say to the client, okay, when you know which direction you're going to go based on my analysis, we can circle back around and go to the second tranche. So, yeah, you know, it's not necessarily open-ended, but that I do it for a lot of developers that are looking at potential project sites in Marin.
And you know,
Steve, can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, yeah. And if I could just add, because we're answering Director Kelly's question.
Sure.
You know, the way this will play out is Riley is someone that we want to have at our meetings to really answer the high level questions or represent us before City of Larkspur in more of a public setting. And then, you know, the practical reality of this arrangement is he's got a lot of resources at Ragianti create us to do the research, you know, the legwork. So we're not paying Riley to do basic tasks. He's more of the front person who will direct it.
Thank you.
And
So we
Steve,
go
I
back
was
to Brian? Now that we can
going to
hear him?
address, yeah, hi, President Sella. I want to address your question. We had, I thought, a really productive informational presentation on September 30th. And really it was focused on various conceptual approaches to the disposition of land, the Larkspur Landing project. And we really evaluated ground leases, an option to sell. We looked at kind of some of the more non-conventional methods, whether that be a joint venture. And so really that was meant to be kind of a presentation. And I think as a logical outgrowth of that conversation, the board was really looking for additional kind of specific legal insight into the entitlements that are in place, what the entitlements might look like going forward, in addition to questions regarding the durability of those entitlements. And so we're not obviously land use attorneys specializing in that arena, but we certainly recognize Riley as being one of those professionals who knows the market very, very well, in addition to really giving us affirmative feedback on what is there and what may be needed in the future. The reason that is so important is because that will directly impact what transaction structure we may want to take going forward. So I view that as being really complementary in terms of moving this forward, and really is a really kind of logical outgrowth of our last conversation with the board.
You're muted. You're muted.
Go ahead, Pam, I'm sorry.
Okay, so 650 an hour. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Planning Commissioner, 9 years for the town of Fairfax, 10 years for the general plan. So I feel I'm pretty competent to understand planning, but we're not getting any kind of figure here on costs. And why aren't we using a planner? And if you need to get a question answered for entitlements, that is a very small part of it. I am very concerned that we're not getting any kind of rough estimate, and this is taxpayers' money. So I personally was wondering why. I know we talked about having a land use attorney to review some particulars, but it sounds like we're doing a full-blown contract of being at meetings and blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure we need that. Until we do, I can't see us, I mean, attorneys at the county level are like $250 an hour. I mean, why couldn't we use a land use attorney for the county level? And the cost would be much less. Plus, they're from Marin County. That's not anything against you, Riley. It's about public money and how we spend it. And we've already spent millions on various issues with this land. So as time is going on, it's the same. Bryant, we don't really have a defined contract with you either, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? It's kind of sort of the same as what Riley's saying. So
No, I think, Pamela, we do have a defined contract with Century Urban in terms of the scope.
It's in three stages.
Yeah, we have a first, phase one scope of services. And I think one of the things that's important for your consideration and the board's is that on the land use side, with regard to Riley, the scope is really to review the in-place entitlements in some form of a memorandum. I think we had some very substantive conversations with a community member at the last meeting, and there were various statements and that were made. I think we really just need to understand that. And so from a presentation point of view, yes, I think at an hourly rate that is high in terms of in general, but for very competent land use representation, it is in line with the market and what we've seen. But there's also, I wish Felicia were here because Felicia's really been kind of leading this effort, and there is a defined scope, which is really a memorandum, outlining the processes that are in place. Are these entitlements even defensible? And how might we look at these in the future? And this isn't meant to be an open-ended exercise where Riley's attending every board meeting or attending, every other meeting. And I don't know what the exact hours are, but it's a very defined scope in terms of how we've at least discussed it or socialized it with Felicia.
Well, that makes me feel like I would abstain tonight until I get more information. I mean, the packet is like, one page from the attorney and then a staff report that's very minimal. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I don't mean to be picky and hold this up, but I don't feel good about, I just saw the new fire JPA who hired their attorney. And, you can go at the county level. I don't feel like there was any search. It was just somebody knows somebody. And I guess I'm getting kind of picky and wiser in my old age. So if this report had been more complete and thorough and potentially some kind of comparison or how long this could go on, it's complicated, I suppose, but I don't have enough information to vote. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you. Are there other comments? Tom, you're off.
Well, I saw the hourly rate too, and I thought it was high. But what I think we can do is, I think understand the need for a land use attorney. What I think we can do is with each assignment that he's not going to be. I don't think, Riley, you're going to be all the time. I think it's going to be specific tasks that you're being asked to do, and so we could perhaps get a fee guess on about this is going to cost about that much when we do an assignment. And so that's the way we can watch the total cost of this. That's my feeling.
Michael or Doug? Doug, you already asked the question. Is this time sensitive? Are you interested in us approving this tonight because there's some activity that needs to take place in the next month?
Yes.
What-
We really want to prepare the board the best we can at staff level with the best expertise available to have the best outcome. And our recommendation is to retain Riley Hurd, whose reputation goes way before, this isn't about getting a low price at all. If you want to be successful in a land use transaction in the county of Marin, you need to have people with extensive experience to be successful. Per hour to me is, we look at that, but in the end, we're talking about an outcome that is millions of dollars in terms of revenue for this district. And to get to that point, you need to assemble a team with expertise and skill and knowledge. And so the recommendation is to retain Riley Hurd. He's made himself available. He works for many counties and cities and special districts in the county. And so we see as fortunate that he's willing to work with us on this. And we want to prepare you for the next public meeting where we have a very cogent, intelligent discussion about entitlements, existing entitlements, what's possible with the range of state initiatives underway, what the city of Larkspur is up against in terms of the non-discretionary actions they need to take and how they can dovetail with the district's interests. We need a high-level, sophisticated team, and I think we have that with Century Urban, and it would only be complemented by someone local like Riley Hurd, who knows the folks, and has an extensive experience working with them.
And so
yes, it's time sensitive.
Pardon me, when is the next public meeting?
It's not scheduled yet, but we think to stay on track, we have a working meeting of December 2nd as a time frame. That's not a promise, that's a working date. We think that keeps the conversation relevant and timely. But if you don't feel comfortable with how this has been set up as a board, we will always follow your lead. But our recommendation would be to keep this thing on track, to retain Ragiani Freitas as part of our overall advisory team and prepare the next workshop to discuss transaction structures as we began discussing, and then follow on with the discussion of entitlements. And, I even spoke with Kristen Teich of City of Larkspur Planning after the meeting, and she indicated to me there was much misinformation that was given at that workshop from the public comments.
Yeah,
And,
I don't know why, we're not sure what Bob Silvestri, why he would be the one to know everything.
Right.
Okay, I hear you. What we're up for approving tonight is a $5,000 retainer.
That's correct.
Right, in terms of dollars. I mean, I would have liked to have seen the memo that Felicia has. And I know this is like her second meeting that she hasn't been to in her entire career with the district. So, but I trust that it exists, and I'm sure that we would make this decision. No question that, Riley and Ragianti and Freitas is the firm for us to do this and do it right. So I'm comfortable with the 5,000. I wish we would have seen Felicia's memo, but can you get that to the board in short order so that we really understand the scope of work for this? Michael, I see your hand. Yes.
Two things. First of all, I see, we got a $5,000 retainer. And then in the scope of this, we've already spent $9 million getting it cleaned up, A. B, I remember correctly, and I wasn't on the board back then, we spent $6 million, perhaps because we didn't do it right and do due diligence and everything else way back when, and had to pay out a massive sum of money. And if we have to pay out a little bit extra right now, and I would just suggest that every month when we meet, maybe we can keep track of this and have an item in the consent calendar or somewhere else, just so we can watch it. But if our staff, Steve and Felicia, both feel that this is, in order to move forward, and this whole thing is time sensitive, going off into the future, let's keep an eye on it, watch it, and each month we can say if there's an issue, let's have a look at it in the finance committee and then in the consent calendar, anywhere else we need to see it.
Yes, Pam.
Well, if you look at the summary and it says a consideration tonight, and it talks about to execute an agreement, okay? There's no agreement in here. I cannot vote for this. I'm not doing this to the ratepayers.
Well,
There's
first, Pam, it's to authorize the general manager to execute an
It's
agreement.
all on, well, I know, but I don't know what's in that agreement. I'm
It's also-
sorry.
It's the two-page memo. It states nothing in this agreement. It refers to this two-page attachment to the board item as an agreement, just as a clarification.
Steve, isn't this technically within your signing authority as $5,000? Yes?
Well, I could look up the financial policies right here and I could look it up.
Andrea, isn't it within his signing authority?
I believe it is.
But it-
But as a matter of keeping the board up to date on putting the team together and getting buy-in on the team, I think that's why it was brought.
I know, this is deeply
It's true, this
intertwined.
is an agreement.
So,
This is
I
an
have a question, a process question about, we can't really do anything with the land, right? Because of the bond issue? Isn't that
Till
correct?
2022. 2022.
So why are we rushing into this now then? That's 2
Because
years from now.
It's
Wait,
quite
that's gonna take a long time.
All
I
right,
don't
my
know.
goal is to
Yeah.
get Riley to his next meeting, and it's 5:58.
I don't want to rush you. I have a little buffer of time, so
Okay,
please
great.
continue
Thank
the discussion.
Yeah, well, I think
I don't
I'm
even,
happy to-
I don't, you know, in this first page, there's other things that are brought up, like zoning laws, like Brown Act, like CEQA, like Subdivision Map Act. That can all be done by a planner, which is half the cost. You know,
That's the
I'm-
resume. That's not the scope. The scope is, it begins with the letterhead on attachment A.
Doug, did you have a question?
I wanted to point out, Pam, that I do want to start this process now. 2022 is when we could dispose of the property. There's a hell of a lot of work to be done between now and then. And I don't want to start in 2022. I want to start now and be ready for 2022.
Okay.
So
all right. So
this is all going to take a long time.
I hear you. So we can terminate Mr. Hurd at any point for any reason without,
Yes.
we won't get sued.
Second paragraph, the second page.
There's nothing here. I mean, oh Lordy.
All right, so, and I am a lawyer, so I will say that I think if we're getting somebody with expertise at a higher hourly billable, we're likely there's some efficiency there. And I believe, you know, that our council probably reviewed this, and I can't help but think that it makes sense. I'm a little surprised that Century Urban, for all the wraparound services that they provide, you know, don't usually trip upon this like land use issue. On the other hand, I know Marin is very particular, and you may always need to associate with a local attorney in order to make it work smoothly. Given that this is $5,000, it's been brought to the board because it's intertwined with policy, I would ask for a motion and ask that we see the scope of work that has been developed when it's available from staff. Yes, Pam.
I have an amendment to that motion.
I didn't make a motion, but anyway, go ahead.
Oh.
I'm asking for a motion.
I move that we authorize the general manager, upon review and approval of council, to execute an agreement for land use related legal services with Ragianti Freitas LLP. And we'll have staff report back to us so that we can be appraised at our future board meetings of how we're doing and what we're doing.
All right, I have a motion. Do I
Is
have
that the cap, 5,000? Or can more money be spent without the board knowing?
Steve or Andrea? It's a
No,
retainer.
that's a retainer, so it's not a cap on the agreement.
So the initial hours will be billed against that. And then when we reach 5,000, Steve, will you come back to the board and let us know how it's going?
I can do that.
Okay, great. So there won't be more than 5,000 spent on these services without us being aware of it. Is that okay, Pam?
I second the motion.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Julia, will you call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes, I look forward to working with you, Riley.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meigs,
Abstain.
Scylla,
Yes,
401 vote. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Riley.
Nice to meet you, Riley. We'll see
Have
you
a
in
good
person
evening.
someday.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good luck tonight.
Thank you.
All right, agenda item number 9, consideration of authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of council to approve task order number 6 with Newt Engineering for lift station condition assessment for infrastructure asset management plan update for an amount not to exceed $120,127. Steve.
Thank you very much, President Scylla and board. I'm bringing this, and then also I'll introduce Mark Wilson here, President of Newt Engineering, who's joined us to answer questions. He's been hard at work for the district, getting into our wet wells last month. As we were doing, the coding project that you approved last month has gotten underway, and he's jumping in there to do condition assessments to make sure he's taking advantage of the opportunity while it's happening. So he looks okay, not too much worse for the wear though.
That's a different world.
Yeah, he gets all dressed up in Tyvek and it's pretty dramatic. So just to go over this a little bit, and as I explained in the staff report, back in December when we approved the task orders for HDR to do specific infrastructure asset management plan tasks, such as creek crossings and I&I reduction and these different task orders, we actually asked them for a bid on evaluating our minor lift stations. And the lift stations are the ones that pump up into a gravity line. And we have about 15 of them. Well, yeah, anyway, a couple of them go into the pressure line. And so these minor lift stations were not evaluated in the 2013 IAMP. So there is something to be done. We got a price from the HDR team back in December that was a little high, we thought. And we indicated in the staff report to you then that we were going to look into working with our local engineers that design these minor lift stations to perform this task. And so that's why I'm coming back to you today, is we worked out a scope with engineering, who, as it turns out, designed 10 out of the 15 pump stations. So there are efficiencies in them having all the records and the designs of these stations to be able to efficiently, and also they're local, so they can just drive down the street and come out and do the field work. And as it turns out, their bid their proposal came in about a quarter lower than what HDR's proposal was. So that's borne itself out, and it's within the budgeted amount overall that we had from last year. So we recommend that we award this contract with Newt. It would be the 6th task order and a master services agreement we have with them. And they are already coordinating with HDR that the lift station evaluation information can be integrated into the capital improvement program overall with all the other evaluations on force mains, creek crossings, pipe defects and other things that we're integrating into an overall vision, which will help us be in compliance finally with the cease and desist order from the regional board. So with that, Mark Wilson, he's here to answer any questions. I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to offer any comments to the board about this work and.
Oh yeah, thanks, Steve. Again, I'm Mark, Newt Engineering. Yeah, these pump stations are pretty familiar to me from past years of work with the district. But I think what's really important and we understand is, when we're taking advantage of this time right now to really hop in there and get the data that we need, that Steve needs for the HDR report. And the pump stations, from what I've known over the years and what I see now is they've been pretty well maintained. I mean, it's not always an easy job, but definitely, next week we're going to have the electrical engineer on site, and I think that's one of the pretty important item is to make sure your panels meet, or just let you know where your panels stand on the current electrical codes. They've changed over the years quite a bit, primarily to ensure the safety of the person servicing the panel. But other than that, it's we're really poised to get that data pretty quick, and then we'll follow up with the full report. But we've done this for SASM. But over 10 years ago when they had their spills, we did a similar data gathering at the pump station. So we're definitely familiar with these pump stations, and I like working with your crew. The district crew is always very on top of things. I've in the last 2 weeks, I guess I've been in 7 pump wet wells in mostly the Riviera Circle area, but you have some history, there's some age issues, but I think what they're planning, that coating project is going to really solve your issues for quite some time structurally in the wet wells. So that's really all I was looking at so far, but and that's why I put on the Tyvek suit, et cetera. So other than that, I really appreciate, working with Ross Valley like we have in the past, and hope to serve you well. We'll see. Do our best.
Great. Board members, any questions? Yes, Tom.
Well, I realize that we're saving about over $35,000 here, but I think a real advantage also is that we have a local engineer, because I think this project is trip intensive. There's going to be a lot of site visits at different times, and so it's a big advantage to have an engineering firm that's 2-3 miles away and come out and take a look at these things, and not spend an hour or so getting here. And they came in less than our cost estimate.
Great. All right. Anyone else? Tom, you want something else you want to say?
Well, I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, okay, great. I was going to say, I think it was Mark that pulled up on a bicycle when I was waving a sign for running for this office the first time at the hub in 2012, and said he wished he could work more with the district. So I'm glad when these things come across our agendas.
Yeah, it was, Mary. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I remember that. Okay, now Tom, I'll entertain your motion, please.
Okay, I move that we authorize the GM upon review and approval of legal counsel to execute task order 6 with Newt Engineering in the amount of $120,127 for the lift station condition assessment for the update of the IAMP.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, Michael, second. Thank you. Julia, roll call, please.
Yes, Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Zilla.
Yes.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, board. I want to note also, I'm going to apply to call OES to pay for this whole part of that. We'll see how far I get it.
Hey, Steve, maybe at the next meeting, I see Mark has a little guitar back there. I could haul out my banjo. You could bring your bass. We could do a little bluegrass. I'm just saying, the Foggy
That
Mountain
sounds good.
breakdown.
Well, speaking of board member compensation, which now would not be eligible under the new policy. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Later.
We'll see you.
Agenda item number 10, discussion and approval of board policy on board member compensation. Steve, do you want to introduce this?
Yes, just as a recap, in September, we brought to the board a discussion of the board compensation policy setting forth the scope of the services that should be covered by the district and its routine compensation of board members for their services. I want to acknowledge both Julia and Andrea here at the meeting who have contributed substantially to this effort, doing some research on other board policies, as well as putting together the recommendations. So there's an attached board member compensation policy, draft policy for your consideration with what we thought we heard on your direction from last month. But again, this is we're all listening to what the board is recommending, and we'll translate that into a proposed policy. So it's up to you whether to pass it as drafted or make any changes, or we can bring it back another draft next month. It's all up to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I read this and thought it was incredibly streamlined and simple, and I did think it reflected what we discussed last time. Particularly like the second component that has, all kinds of activities eligible for compensation upon pre-approval of the board. I think that leaves us flexible and, without people getting necessarily compensated for stuff that we don't all agree upon in advance. Board members, any comments on this?
I have
Yes,
a question. Oops.
I saw Doug first. Go ahead, Doug.
I'm fine with this. I think it's great. The only thing I would want to change is on the attachment C. I'd like the conferences to state the locations. It doesn't make much difference on this board, but on some boards it does, and I think it's public information the public should have. So if, for example, I'm going, and only I am going to conferences 4 times a year in Las Vegas, I think the public should know about that.
But so we should add the location to the conference? Is that what you're saying?
That's right. I think all boards and commissions in Marin should do that. I think we'd get some really interesting information if we saw that.
Right.
Where is the C you're talking about?
To the ordinance.
The last page.
I don't know how to describe it. It's the end of the agenda item.
The compensation sheet.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
I
have a question for Andrea and Julia. You put this together, right? Yeah. Did you look at increases in compensation in Marin County at other districts?
In what scope, Director Meigs?
Well, we used to have one that went up every year or every so many years on a percentage basis. And we canceled that out, was it 3 years ago? So I'm wondering,
2017.
did you look at that variable? I'm just curious.
In the last, sorry, Julia, in the last board discussion of this, we had a table that compared the policies for compensation as well as the current rates. I don't believe we looked at what those districts' policies are on rate increases, but rather we did a snapshot of what their rates are.
No, a couple of them had examples of annual increases. I think somebody had 2%, and I thought there was a couple that did have annual rate increases.
I mean, we've had the same amount for how many years now?
3. Since 2017, you had it automatically increasing, and the board decided to stop the automatic increase in light of where this board's pay was in comparison with other districts.
Yeah, and we're still the highest of any sanitary district.
No, Las Galinas is. I think Los Gallinas.
They're 250 something.
And for the record, CMSA last week decided to maintain the fee at $225 with no escalator as well.
Thank you.
Yes, Tom.
Okay, I have some comments on this. I really like it. It's streamlined. But what I think we ought to do is, for the top part, we have the first dot, attendance at regular and special board meetings and standing committee meetings. Then I think we ought to put the service on other boards. Well, I think we should keep a bullet for board members who are not compensated for services on the CMSA board or CMSA board appointments. Then I think we ought to put service on other boards, associations, such as whatever, down in the following activities. That should be, that bullet about the North Bay watershed or board appointed should be down in the third one. And I believe that travel costs, meals, etc., are not allowed for activities within 20 miles of district office. Ought to go up in the first tier. And then I further think that we should compensate board members for being on the business management plan committee. I thought that was a very important committee. And I personally don't think we should compensate for the North Bay Watershed Association. I don't think it's a direct benefit. It's a good organization. It's not a direct benefit to this district. And we, anyway, put it down in the third category and we can vote on it at the time. But those are my comments on this.
Do you have those edits written down so you could just send them?
I do.
Okay.
Director Gaffney, I found your comments from the September meeting very helpful, so I would appreciate if you could send your revised comments again.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
if they're hands, oh, I was just going to say, you're at the RVSD office right now, Tom, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, you can make a photocopy or just leave them there for.
Julia, are you? Yeah, I can do that.
Just a logistical idea. Pam, go ahead.
I think the North Bay Water District's very valuable to wastewater. I don't know, Tom, if you've ever been to a meeting, but it's a very valuable organization, and I think it's now up to 4 counties. We talk about not only just the environment, but how water is being used and how One Water is really playing out with the future. So not to, I mean, you know, it's like half your day. And I don't know, I just don't think that doesn't feel good and doesn't feel supportive. And it has been on for years, going way back, probably to 2006, I believe. And then I think there was a little bit of a lull there. So I would beg to differ there. You could, you know, I don't know. I just don't think we're paying dues. We're paying very expensive dues just to be on that committee. And the high level of education and networking and connecting with all these other board members, but also staff and managers, it's phenomenal. So I really think that if a board member is going, they should be absolutely reimbursed on that one. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, it's almost like a mini conference in a way, but you know, there is a lot of stuff happening that you don't know, that if you're not going and if you're not involved, you wouldn't understand.
So I would say let's try to limit this discussion to this document specifically. And I understand, Tom, you were saying that you thought North Bay Watershed, it does stand out as the only single thing that's named outright. So what do other folks think about whether that is something that we ought to, I mean, I could imagine us reconsidering and deciding to do it, certainly. Michael, Doug, what are your thoughts?
Tommy, yeah, we have Michael serving there on CMSA, so I wouldn't change the compensation policy for our RVSD that board at this time.
Okay.
I actually, Doug, did mention to both Dean and Jason previously that maybe that should be a non-compensated position over there. And they decided not to think about it at that time because they didn't, for whatever reason, they didn't want to at that time.
So wait, you're
Right, we
attending?
didn't do it last week. We didn't change. We did not. So we're paying you to attend that.
You used my name, as I'm saying that I brought
Right.
it up, that, you know, I mean, Doug, you and I are not compensated by Central Marin sanitation agents, excuse me, by the Ross Valley Sanitary District to attend the Central Marin Sanitation Agency. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just
Right.
saying that's the case. I mean, it used to be the case that we actually paid a differential between the $100 that was paid at the time for CMSA and the $314 that was paid to us, and for many years, and we actually changed that a while back. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just pointing out the different stuff.
Right, that was my motion, so I remember that motion very well. I'm just saying I wouldn't change the policy on this commission at this time. We didn't decide to do it at CMSA. I don't think we should do it here. We can think about it in the future.
Well, we'll just put it down in the third category and we can vote on it. And then, you know, that's fine. That's what we're doing anyway. Mary, maybe I could submit my write-up. I wrote most of this already. And now I want to revise it.
Okay, that's fair.
Can we carry this to the next meeting?
Sure, I think that makes sense. I mean, I do like what you're saying. It does seem to be, it seems like some of the bullets could be, the second bullet could be separated out into two, and then, you know, maybe we should have, this is what's always compensated, and then everything else is either we decided and voted now, or we would vote on it, make a decision as the issue comes up.
That's
So,
right.
all right, so Director Gaffney, you're offering to assist in rearranging to bring it again to the board again next month?
Yes.
Pam, yes?
Didn't we have in here, so what we're looking at in attachment A, is that the new policy by itself? That's what I
Yes.
don't understand. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay, so what happened is the 1 hour thing in here, if a meeting was less than an hour, you didn't get paid. Am I correct? Is that the old policy?
I don't recall.
I don't think we had that written in a policy. All we had was the ordinance that was the amount, the up to amount. I don't think we had it in a particular, I don't think we have it in the ordinance that if it's less than an hour. But if
Okay.
the board wants to put that into the compensation policy, we can.
I don't know what other
I don't
groups.
recall that either. I do recall if you went to multiple meetings on one day, you only, that there was a per day compensation, not a per
That's
meeting.
right. It's per day and not per meeting. Mhm.
But if you had one meeting on one day and it was less than an hour, you get paid for it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up, but so some people have a bunch of meetings and some people don't. Would that be in part of a policy on how we divvy up meetings, or would that matter? Would that be a separate policy, Andrea?
I'm not quite sure what you mean. Some people have multiple meetings and others don't. What do you mean by that?
Some people have more meetings than others, and some people don't have any or one or something. Would that
Right.
be part of how we divvy up every July board meetings and how we, I don't know, I'm just asking.
I think we could put a cap on somebody's, you know, earnings through board meeting participation potentially, but I mean, it's always been variable based on how many committees people are serving on. And
It's in the, those aren't they in the monthly report out? What board members make and how many meetings they
Yes.
have?
It's in the financial report every month.
Okay.
We specifically have a box for that.
In the check register.
Ordinance number 80 caps the number of meetings to 6 per month.
Yep. No, that's not the question. It's not the question. Okay. All right. So there's no cap on how much money you make, but there is a cap on how many meetings you can attend to in a month. But you could attend more, you just wouldn't get paid for them. Is that correct?
Correct.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so Tom and staff, you'll work together to bring this back next month? Thank you.
Julia, I'm going to email it to you. My paper's so messy, you wouldn't be able to follow it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Director Gaffney.
All right. Item number 11, consideration of accepting the year-end metrics report for fiscal year 2019-2020. This is such good news. Steve and Steve, we don't have Patrick with us, so.
Yeah.
Who
Well,
wants
good. I'll definitely allow you to hear from our ops chief over here. But let me just give you an overview. If you have the document in front of you, I can walk through what I think are a few highlights. But I did note in the narrative in the report this year that almost 1/3 of this fiscal year was during COVID. You know, it started mid-March when we kind of ground to a halt, and then we sputtered back into life in April and finished pretty strong by June. But our metrics in this report don't show that we skipped a beat, or you know, that we had any issues from a metrics standpoint. And I think that speaks volumes to staff's commitment, and Mixus did a good job of, as field general, of marshaling the field resources there toward the end of the year, so that it's hard to tell that there was even a pandemic based on our outputs. So, you know, I made sure to write something up in the narrative to that effect. So that's pretty cool. You know, that shows that our group is committed to public health protection, especially when public health is so sensitive during a pandemic event. So I think that was very cool. So I'd like to maybe turn to page 10 of the report, which is 102 of the packet. And this is a table, you know, all the tables in this report now go back 5 years. So when we first started this tradition, when I first started here 2 years ago, it was a 3-year retrospective, and we've kept the years in and are doing keeping them in for the context of the long-term trends, and they're all very favorable. One is this page 10 and 43. We have this wet weather and infiltration inflow volume, and we have an R factor that is a rough estimate of the percent of the rainfall that gets into a sewer system based on some modeling assumptions. But you see that since 2015-16 to today, you know, we see a calculated reduction based on flow measurements of what the rain that actually enters our system. So it's a continued downward trend from 8.6 down to 7%. So it's favorable. This is what we, from in the engineering perspective, we talk of index. You know, this isn't a precise estimate, but it's an index that we can track over time that shows a favorable trend of reduced rainfall in our system. And this is a very rich table of data because it has flow volume to CMS, but also it's broken down into dry weather and wet weather. And when you look at rainfall, this last year was the driest year in the last 5 years in terms of the fiscal year. All right, so that's favorable. Moving on, I'll take you to page 17, which is 109 of the packet. And this is a soft blockages broken. Now, why does that matter? You know, that means that we are keeping track, or our line maintenance routines are better calibrated to where problem areas are, so that when we're doing the line maintenance, we're not breaking up as many soft blockages. They're not accumulating to the point where they might cause an SSO. So this is an indication of our system is getting more and more intelligent as years go by, and we're breaking up less soft blockages over the last 4 years. So this is a very favorable trend. It shows that we're good stewards of our system. I'm going to keep going to page 24. Number of public sanitary sewer overflows. This is the graphic that you give to the bond people.
Yes.
When you're at CMSA, you guys want to issue a bond, they can say, well, how's the performance going? And you give them this graph right here, which shows our SSOs per year are going down significantly. Now, next, 29. This is an indicator. I worked with Patrick and John Vogel, and it's like, I want to mine data. And a year ago, we came up with this one. Like, what's a good indicator of our system condition? Well, the number of grade 5 defects in our pipes is a good indicator. You know, those are the bad ones, the big cracks, the holes. And so through our sophisticated program of continually evaluating the condition of our system, these two graphs are very favorable in terms of the overall health of our pipe system. Just going back 4 years, you know, whether it's the number of pipes with a grade 5 defect or the total defects in the system, you have a statistically significant downward trend in both the number of pipes, only down to 520, coming from about 1,000 4 years ago, or the number of actual defects that we've logged in our system. We've cut them in half from 2,200 down to 1,000. So that's some hard, cold data. And then one of my favorites is it's a complicated table. It's on page 31, 123 of the packet. This is a table that we give to the regional water board, and it tracks our capital outputs and our repair outputs year by year in terms of miles, and it's focused on grade 5 or grade 4 defects that are addressed within, like in a capital pipe replacement, or if we actually do a repair in-house and line it. And there's a friendly competition going on. We're competing about in-house miles versus going out to bid capital miles. And there's a lot of pride in our repair crew that they're outpacing the capital program year after year. If you look at the totals, I know there's a lot of numbers there, but we get to total miles restored, 63. We have 193 miles or so in the system. So 63 of 193, that's a third. That's a third of the system, folks, in the last 7 years that we've renewed. Also, if you take those numbers from capital and add them up, that's 28 miles. And you take the grade 5, grade 4 columns, that's 5 miles. So repair is beating capital 35 to 28. That's kind of cool.
Yep.
And then finally, as part of my tour through the favorite indicators, on page 37, 29 of the packet, capital program. Holy mackerel. Did you see this graph? 28 miles of laterals have been replaced. We started the program about 10 years ago. And we're on a good clip right now. And the lateral grant program and the loan program only help. It really helps. It's grants are a good lubricant for the system to keep moving. So I think it's also cool that the 28 miles of laterals tracks really closely with your 28 miles of capital. So inside the system, and then 35 miles of repair. So, we better be seeing that first table, where we're seeing less of the rain getting into our system. Well, we should, because we've really replaced a lot of pipe. And so that's my little tour of my highlights. So I'm obviously very excited. And we shared this report with the Regional Water Board about a year ago. They got back to me that day saying how impressed they were with this way of presenting information, because it's easy to read, it's short narratives, and a lot of graphic information. And so they were blown away. And I say, as far as expectations for collection systems, if you look at this level, this is what we can track. This is really my message to them, because we don't have a discharge permit like CMSA, where CMSA is going to be judged based on the effluent quality going to the bay if they're complying with limits, right? But we don't have anything for them to judge us by. And so I provide, and we can provide this type of metrics report, is like, well, these are the things we're tracking, and this is what we think good looks like. And they really responded favorably to this way of presenting information. So I want to hand it off to Mixus. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal any of your thunder, but I'm pretty excited about this report.
You took most of it, but I'll definitely jump in on one point. On page 19, the service calls are what really affects our operations, and the dramatic drop in the number of service calls and the service call hours really allowed us to perform our normal duties. But Steve nailed it on everything else. And but when our service calls go down, that's less interruption, and we can do our core duties. But I showed the report to the guys over at the landing, and tomorrow I'm going to show it over at Kerner. Everyone, there was a bunch of high fives. We know every one of these service calls, SSOs. We've all been there, the supervisors, me as an ops manager. I obviously informed Steve, but we're real proud of where we're going, and we continually look to get better. So thank you to Steve, Felicia, the board. We're very happy with this report.
So were we.
Recycled water in there too. It's on page 17, but it's just.
I love the recycled water.
We're just getting started, yeah.
and more for pipes than just the dust.
Yes.
Which is part of our ongoing maintenance. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
Actually, we did a training at CMSA today for 2 of our harbins, and they're fully qualified. We had a bunch of people. We're developing an SOP. So now we will have 4 trucks. If they go out, they're required to fill up at CMSA. And Mark over at CMSA, he's the regulatory manager. Wonderful. He did the whole training session. So instead of 2 trucks, we'll now have 4 trucks going out every day with recycled water. So we're real happy with the direction that we're going. And 1 more truck, and we're fully solid.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, we got to tell North Bay Watershed about that.
Good point. Yes.
Are you going to send this to the regional board and the state board again? Great.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Good.
Michael, did you want to say something? Michael?
Oh, I just wanted to point out, Steve he didn't pass over. He said a point about that because of how we're doing with things like this, we make CMSA look good. Well, we just got our Moody's rating improved over there, and it's partially because of our improvement at RVSD. In the past, we have actually dragged CMSA down in their ratings, is my understanding, but not anymore. Now we're helping them out and helping to lift them up also.
And I love the miles of lateral. I'm glad you pointed that out, because I did not catch that in my review. And looking at the years, I mean, it really did start to go up after we adopted the ordinance about the real estate transactions. So it would be worth telling Vivian Housen, yes, because Vivian Housen came and presented to us and said, there are things you can do to try to get people to replace their laterals. And here's the whole menu of things you can do, and we did all of them. So that's a really nice graph that demonstrates the impact of that. I'm virtually certain it was in that either, year 5 or 6. before it took off. So
Very
great.
good point. It wasn't just the grants, it was actually the ordinance that triggered the reviews. Very good point.
Yes.
And Director Silla, most of our server calls back in the day were due to private sanitary sewer overflows. The lateral grant program has dramatically changed that, and that goes back to my comment over the service calls reduction and all the 4-inch root slugs getting pushed into our main, and so yeah, it's an absolute success in my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, and the realtors
Marin?
have gotten used to it as much as they complained at the beginning. They've gotten used to it. Great. Anybody else have any comments on this? Doug?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, first off, I love the report. It's great. Everything in it is great. One of the things that I like is that except for during the very, very peak of the winter, we've dropped our flows to CMSA to about 45% from 50. And we've been paying 50% of the bills over there because we're doing 50% of the flow. So every drop of water that we don't send forward is a benefit to the ratepayers of this district. I'm hopeful that it seems like we're not going to have a lot of rain this winter, and that's a shame. But when we do have another big rain season, I hope to see our peak flow not be 50%. And I think that's what we will see. I think we'll see a reduction in that because some of the capital programs, especially, and repairs, Steve, and repairs that have happened over the last couple of years. So I really believe that that'll go down during the peak periods. It certainly is going down for the rest of the year, and that makes a considerable impact on our budgets, and so that's good. Because of course, I think if you did that, Steve, and I'd be interested in looking at that over a 5 or 10 year period, it was going in the wrong direction, I'm sure, and now it's going in the right direction. That'd be a really interesting chart to add to next year's.
Yeah, it's interesting though. There's a little bit of a zero-sum game, as you know. If we go down, then the other JPAs go up, right? So there's a friendly competition with our JPA members.
But
maybe we just look at it amongst ourselves. Okay.
Haven't our CMSA payments been set at an equal for budgeting purposes? It's not true that we're paying based on flow, correct?
Actually, there is. There's a correction, and Melvin could answer some of these questions, but I remember I have a distinct memory of around May getting altered schedules based on actual flow, and it went down, and San Rafael's went up.
That's right.
It wasn't massive, but it was enough of a change where it was like, oh, that's actually, a good indicator.
Okay.
So it's not a huge windfall, but there are minor adjustments that occur. Do you know anything about that, Director Gaffney?
Yeah, I think they average it over 3 years, a 3-year trend of your percentage, and it did go down, and I can't remember the percentage. But also there's an element, it's not all based on flow and strength. And if you notice, San Rafael has higher strength usually than we have because they've got more commercial. And so the other part of the charge is a service charge based on equivalent dwelling units. And
Right.
that's pretty solid. So anyway, yeah, we want to reduce our flow and reduce our share of the cost of CMSA. Let our partners pay it.
Right. And Steve, it may not have gone down significantly, but as opposed to it going up, which is the direction it was going in.
Right.
So that ends up being significant.
Oh yeah, I didn't mean to say it wasn't. I was just saying it's there. It's there.
Oh, I had wondered if we really got all the pipes sealed, if our flow wouldn't go up, because not only do we have inflow, we have outflow, right? Yeah, it looks. All right, may I have, if there's no more discussion, may I have a motion to accept this beautiful report?
I'd move to accept the year-end metrics report for fiscal year 2019-20.
Thank you, Doug. Second?
I second.
Thank you, Michael. Julia, roll call vote, please.
Yes, thank you, President Silla. Borstein?
Yes, and thank you to both Steves.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes, great metrics. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Hilla.
Yes,
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
thank you. Item number 12, review and terminate the emergency action adopted in resolution number 2015-86 for 31 Ellsworth Easement Pipeline Slide Repair in Oak Manor, and authorize general manager to issue payment of $83,225 to Hanford ARC Incorporated. Steve.
Thank you, President Sella and board, and thank you for your patience on this project. We declared an emergency, but we did extend the timeline on resolving it based on trying to have a higher probability of success of germination of biotechnical solution that we implemented here. And so in today's staff report, I did include some before and after photos, and I can show them on screen if you'd like. Julia, I could share those photos. But I wanted to disclose also, some of in the staff report I talked about, we had some change orders that I approved that I'm asking you to ratify. Which had to do with the hydro seeding, which if you can see here, this is the, as you go into the easement, see here, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
It's around, there's a manhole there, and there's a soil nail wall, concrete wall here that protects that manhole where the line is really close to the edge. Here we trimmed the slope. So where you see the second wattle down, there used to be kind of a knob, kind of a cornice of soil that was at risk of failing. And so we trimmed and removed that soil, and some trees that had fallen over partially and were at risk of pulling, with wind and moisture pulling the slope down. And so we had those trees removed. That's what it used to look like beforehand. So there was kind of an overhang of the old soil nail wall. These trees were partially falling over. And you see the subsoil, see how it's after 3 years, nothing's grown on it? That's an indication of a lack of organic matter that would help germinate seeds. And so one of those change orders that I approved was to add a kind of a fertilizer and a sterile wheat grass that will take hold in these type of areas, the first wave of succession, and then subsequently the native grasses can get established, or the naturalized grasses. So that was one of the change orders. Another of the change orders was this line here, and see the pipe on the left, the drainage around both the soil nail wall and the new fix. And that aqua color is the hydro seeding that has that fertilizer and seed mix, just as a reference. The second change order, it was a little larger, was $14,000 to unearth and reset the riprap and the storm drain here for it to function properly. It had been buried, and this photo here shows how that storm drain was under the plastic, and we didn't realize that there was a bunch of soil over the storm drain that had to be hand removed because this is such a steep slope, we couldn't get a piece of equipment down there to do it. We also, in that process, downstream of the storm drain, this area here was kind of loose, and it had some scree, some loose rock and soil in here that we stabilized by putting in extra heavy duty fabric and wattles going down the drainage. So this really stabilize and prevent any further migration of significant sediments into the canyon. And this is a preventive measure up here on the road. We did a ditch upstream so that the water coming off of this area doesn't just saturate the area around the sewer, which goes down the center of this aqua colored road. And by putting this drainage here, we're going to divert water away from saturating the area around the sewer. This is the pre-picture here, you know, where there's no way for the water to drain. It would just accumulate around where the sewer is located. And then my final photos just show the other direction, looking east, the old soil nail wall and firm drain, and then this newly stabilized slope with the hydro seeding. So we think these biotechnical solutions here should do the trick, and we don't expect to have to return here again. But we will over the winter stop by to make sure, you know, our proposed revegetation is working out. And so it's a little bit more than the contract amount was originally 75,000. It came down because we took some things off of the bid, but then it went up because of the change orders. And I'm asking you to approve the 83,225 bill. That's a lot less than the 200,000 that previous staff had estimated for the solution here back in 2017. So the good news is it's less than half the cost than was otherwise predicted. And with that, I ask you to terminate the emergency and approve the change orders and the final contract. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks good and it's more natural. That's concrete. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay.
Great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, really great job.
Yeah, you know, Hanford is really good. I did sort of encourage them to do the work. They gave us a good bid price, and they're very reputable. They've done a lot of great environmental restorations in Marin County, and they're out of Petaluma. So we were fortunate to get to work with them.
That's great. All right.
I move we terminate the emergency action adopted in resolution number 19-1586 for 31 Ellsworth easement pipeline slide repair in Oak Manor, and authorize the general manager to issue payment of $83,225 to Hanford ARC Inc.
I see the resolution is 20-1586.
I'm looking at on page 138 of 1.
Oh, you're right. It's different. Is the resolution 19 or 20?
20, I'm sorry, that's a clerical error.
Okay, then.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
Change your resolution to 20-1586.
Thank you.
So moved. Thank you, Doug.
Doug is seconding that? Is that right? Yeah.
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
Julia, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Phila.
Yes.
Unanimous vote, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and now we just have more good news. Item 13A. 2 no spill months in a row. I'm just gonna say it. Steve, anything more you want to tell us about this month?
What do you think, Steve Mixes?
We had a really good month, and it's during a pandemic. I think we had 5 service calls. I lost it on my left side of my screen here, but we're really knocking it out of the park. We understand that there's going to be some reduction in production for footages, but we're doing the assessments Monday and Tuesday. We do have a plan to get caught up, but again, we're going over this with the field crews. It's really a morale booster. So we're on the right path.
We used recycled water to do hydro seeding at the
great
restoration. So we put that in the report. Yeah, we got hydro seeding on the menu. And then to Director Kelly's point, if you look at September of 20, I don't know if that's a record.
43.
Oh, we're only 43.
43. Yep, outstanding.
And I will mention that the condition assessment crew, the inspection of 310 creek crossings was a valuable help to the IMP update. It was our crews doing it. We know our infrastructure, so we found out some stuff we really like to know and we didn't want to know, and that'll be in the full report. And yeah, we're really proud of another no spill report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the creek crossing work, it was partly in October though too, right? But I guess a little bit in September. Yeah.
Yes, at the end of tail end.
Yeah. That'll be important. I don't know, for what it's worth, board members, in the statewide discussions right now, there are some lawsuits out there about this concept of exfiltration. Have you heard of this? Yeah, and some environmental groups have sued sanitary agencies about being sources of bacterial pollution to stormwater and creeks and beaches. And so part of being prepared for something like that is to identify potential pathways where the sewer is located above either the creek or the storm drain as a potential source of exfiltration of raw sewage. And so the work that we did this month really is preparing us wonderfully for a very strong defense of our program of having identified potential risk. And to a certain extent, it can inform our capital program or repair program about priority areas to focus on to prevent exfiltration. So this was good timing for us to get this work done with the IAMP.
That's great. All right, that is, informational items. Oh no, we did that already. Sorry, that is the end of our agenda. Our next meeting is November 18th. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for everything, board members. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you all.
Good night.